The billionaire's daughter was born blind and lived hidden from the world until a poor street boy discovered a shocking secret that would change everything forever. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered against the enormous glass windows of the Matthews mansion like furious fists demanding entry. Inside, Sophia Matthews, 7 years old, sat motionless in her velvet armchair, her small fingers tracing the intricate patterns of her favorite music box. She couldn't see the storm outside, but she could feel its fury in her bones. "Daddy will be home soon, dear," Carmen, the nanny, whispered, though her voice carried doubt. Roberto Matthews was 3 hours late again. Sophia's blind eyes turned toward the familiar voice. "Carmen, do you think Daddy is ashamed of me?" The question hit like lightning. Carmen knelt beside the chair, her heart broken. "Oh, Sophia, never think that. Your father loves you more than anything in this world." But Sophia had heard the whispered phone conversations, the way visitors' voices changed when they didn't know she was listening. She was Roberto Matthews' greatest secret, the blind daughter of America's youngest technology billionaire, hidden like a shameful truth. 8 blocks away, in the shadows of a crumbling alley, Miguel Santos pressed his back against a dumpster, trying to escape the freezing rain. At 8 years old, he had been living on these streets for 4 months, since the car accident that stole his parents and his old life. His stomach growled violently, but something else bothered him, a strange feeling he'd been having for days. There was something wrong in that big house with the golden gates. Something that made his chest tighten and his head buzz with invisible electricity. Miguel had what his mother used to call the knowing. He could sense when people were hurt, lying, or hiding something big, and that mansion practically screamed with hidden pain. When the storm intensified, Miguel made a decision that would change everything. He ran through the rain toward the Matthews property, driven by an instinct he didn't understand but couldn't ignore. The security cameras missed him, a skill learned in months of evading authorities. Miguel slipped through the garden, his heart pounding as he approached the enormous windows. What he saw inside made his special gift explode with overwhelming sensation. A girl sitting alone in the dark, tears streaming down her face. But it wasn't just sadness Miguel felt. There was something more, something about her eyes that didn't match what everyone believed. When Miguel approached the window, Sophia's head suddenly turned in his direction, as if she could sense his presence. Their eyes met through the glass, and in that moment, Miguel knew with absolute certainty that everything everyone believed about Sophia Matthews was wrong. America's greatest lie was about to be exposed by a homeless boy who could see what others could not. Miguel's breath fogged the cold window as he watched Sophia more closely, his heart hammering with the electricity of discovery that ran through his veins like liquid fire. Her movements weren't right for someone completely blind. When Carmen dropped a leather-bound book from across the ornate room, Sophia's head turned to the exact spot where it fell, before even the sound finished echoing through the mansion's high ceilings. When lightning flashed outside, casting brief but brilliant shadows across the room, filled with valuable antiques, Sophia's pupils contracted slightly, but Miguel's supernatural gift caught every microscopic detail with devastating clarity. "She can see," he whispered to himself, the revelation hitting like a train loaded with life-changing implications. But why would they lie about something so fundamental? Why would a billionaire father hide his precious daughter from the world and pretend she was blind when she clearly wasn't? Miguel's gift buzzed with dangerous electricity, sending sharp tingles down his spine that made his entire nervous system feel like it was catching fire. There was something much darker lurking beneath the surface, something sinister that made his stomach churn with instinctive dread. He watched Sophia's delicate fingers trace intricate patterns on her ornate music box, patterns too complex and precise for someone navigating purely by touch. She knew exactly where each porcelain figurine was, could predict their graceful movements as the haunting melody played. This wasn't the careful, hesitant behavior of a child who had lost her sight in a tragic accident. This was someone who had been very carefully trained to pretend, to deceive everyone around her. Suddenly, the mansion's front door exploded open with violent, desperate force that echoed through every room. Roberto Matthews burst through the entrance like a man fleeing death itself, his expensive Italian suit completely soaked by the relentless storm. His normally perfect hair plastered to his skull, but it was his face that made Miguel's supernatural gift scream urgent warnings. Pure fury, mixed with absolute terror, the unmistakable expression of a man being hunted by monsters. "Where is she?" he barked at Carmen, his voice carrying an edge sharp enough to cut steel. Carmen jumped back, nearly dropping the delicate porcelain tea tray she was carrying. "In the sitting room, sir. She's been asking about you all evening, worried." Roberto marched toward Sofia like a man possessed by demons, and Miguel pressed closer to the rain-soaked window, his small hands leaving desperate fingerprints on the cold glass. Every instinct in his body told him this was the crucial moment that would change absolutely everything. "Sofia, we're leaving tonight, right now, this very minute." Sofia's porcelain face paled like winter moonlight. "Leaving? But Daddy, this is our home. This is where we're safe." "Home?" Roberto laughed, but there was no warmth or humor in the sound. Just bitter, crushing despair. "Home is where people can't find us, sweetheart. Take only what you absolutely need. We leave in exactly 1 hour." Miguel watched Sofia's reaction with laser focus, his gift analyzing every micro-expression. Fear flashed across her delicate features, but not the confused disorientation of someone truly blind navigating unexpected changes. She knew exactly what was happening, could read every emotion on her father's face with perfect crystal clarity. More importantly, she was terrified of something very specific, something that had absolutely nothing to do with being unable to see. When Roberto began pacing the room like a caged tiger, pulling out his encrypted phone and making frantic, whispered calls to unknown contacts, Miguel made the decision that would change his life. He had to know the complete truth, no matter what it cost. Roberto Matthews hadn't always been a man living in suffocating shadows, jumping at every unexpected sound and trusting absolutely no one. Just 3 years ago, he had been America's undisputed golden boy, the brilliant technology genius who revolutionized artificial intelligence before turning 30, changing the entire world with his innovations. His company, Neural Connect Systems, was worth $12 billion and rising, and every major magazine from Forbes to Time wanted him gracing their covers as the face of the future. He had given TED Talks to thunderous standing ovations, been prominently featured on multiple Forbes billionaire lists, lived in a breathtaking Miami mansion that overlooked the infinite Atlantic Ocean like a modern technological palace. Presidents called him for advice. Other billionaires sought his guidance. He was unstoppable, untouchable, living the American dream at its absolute peak. Then came the night that destroyed his perfect world into 1,000,000 irreparable pieces. Sofia was playing innocently in the beach house sunroom, her 5-year-old laughter echoing cheerfully through rooms filled with priceless contemporary art and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the ocean like living paintings. Roberto was in his state-of-the-art home office, taking an important investment call from his Miami partners when the massive explosion shook the entire oceanfront property to its foundations. The official report filed by investigators and fire officials blamed a tragic gas leak, a horrible random accident that could strike anyone, anywhere, without warning. Just one of those terrible things that happen in life. Roberto found his beloved daughter unconscious among the smoking debris and shattered glass. Her beautiful blue eyes open, but apparently sightless, staring blindly at nothing. The trauma team at Metropolitan Hospital ran every sophisticated test known to modern medical science, sparing no expense. Traumatic cortical blindness caused by the explosion, they concluded with professional certainty. The neurological damage appears to be completely permanent. We're sorry, Mr. Matthews. The media frenzy that followed was immediate, brutal, and absolutely relentless. Billionaire's daughter loses sight in tragic accident, screamed every headline from Los Angeles to New York to London. Matthew's empire crumbles as CEO focuses on disabled daughter. His company's stock prices plummeted overnight. Investors fled like rats from a sinking ship. Roberto's perfect life became a public catastrophe, dissected by every news outlet in America. But Roberto knew something the doctors, the media, and the entire watching world didn't know. Something that would have changed everything. In the hospital during those endless sleepless nights, when Sophia thought everyone was sleeping, he had caught her doing things that should have been completely impossible for someone with traumatic brain injury. Tracking a nurse's silent movement across the room, turning toward the television when her favorite cartoon came on, even with the sound completely muted, carefully avoiding new obstacles that hadn't been there the day before. "Why don't you tell them the truth, sweetheart?" he had whispered one night, his heart absolutely broken as he knelt beside the hospital bed. Sophia's small, frightened voice had destroyed what remained of his world. "The bad man called when you went to get coffee, Daddy. He said if anyone found out I can see, he would make you have an accident too. He said terrible accidents happen to daddies who don't pay what they owe." 3,000 miles away, in a luxurious Las Vegas penthouse that cost more per month than most working Americans earned in an entire year, Victor Castillo smiled with predatory satisfaction as he read the latest bank transfer notification on his diamond-encrusted smartphone. $50 million transferred punctually like a precision clock. Roberto Matthews was proving such a reliable, predictable, and completely controllable client. Exactly the type of victim Victor preferred. Victor had built his vast criminal empire systematically on other people's most devastating secrets, but the Matthews girl was his absolute masterpiece, a criminal work of art that had taken months of careful planning and flawless execution. The gas explosion that supposedly blinded little Sophia hadn't been an accident. Of course not. Victor had paid dearly for the kind of specialists who could make calculated assassinations look like random, tragic misfortunes. The type of professionals who left no traces, evidence, or loose ends. His original plan had been elegantly simple. Kill the child in a way that looked accidental, destroy Roberto Matthews emotionally and psychologically, then acquire neural connect systems for pennies when the grieving father inevitably self-destructed completely. It was a strategy Victor had used successfully dozens of times before, always with perfect results. But when little Sophia miraculously survived the explosion with apparent blindness, Victor's brilliant criminal mind immediately saw an even more lucrative long-term opportunity. Why destroy a golden goose when you could make it lay golden eggs indefinitely for years and years? One carefully crafted terrorizing phone call to a traumatized 5-year-old girl, complete with graphic, specific threats about what happened to beloved daddies who didn't cooperate fully. And suddenly, Victor owned a $12 billion technology empire without having to fire a single shot or risk any direct exposure. "Boss," called Rico, his thick-necked lieutenant from across the penthouse's marble-floored living room. The Matthews mansion just went completely dark. Security cameras, motion sensors, everything's been shut down. Looks like our boy is making another desperate run. Victor's predatory smile vanished like morning mist in Florida sun. In the 2 profitable years of this beautiful arrangement, Roberto had moved Sophia exactly 14 times, always staying precisely 1 step ahead of Victor's surveillance network, while continuing to pay like the obedient, terrified victim he was. But lately, Matthews was getting sloppy, increasingly desperate, using his vast technological resources and connections to investigate Victor's carefully hidden organization. The billionaire was beginning to push against his chains, and that made him extremely dangerous to Victor's entire operation. "Time to remind Matthews exactly why he pays us so reliably," Victor said coldly, his voice carrying the deadly certainty of a man who had killed for far less important reasons. "Schedule a personal demonstration, something intimate, something that will make him remember what happens to people who stop cooperating with our mutually beneficial business arrangement." He opened a high-resolution photograph on his tablet. Sophia Matthews, supposedly blind, sitting peacefully in a garden full of blooming roses. But Victor's professionally trained eye caught what everyone else missed completely. The way she avoided low branches too perfectly, the slight tracking of her pupils when colorful birds flew overhead. Miguel couldn't force himself to leave, even though every hard-won survival instinct screamed at him to run as far and fast as possible. He had learned to trust these instincts completely during 4 brutal months on the unforgiving streets, but this time was different in ways he couldn't fully understand. Every fiber of his being, every electric pulse of his mysterious, supernatural gift told him that Sophia Matthews was in terrible, immediate danger that went far beyond anything he had ever encountered. He had discovered his strange ability after the devastating car accident that stole his parents and his entire world in one horrible instant. Suddenly, without warning or explanation, he could sense when people were lying, hiding something important, or planning to do something terrible. It felt like invisible electricity crackling through his brain, translating complex human emotions into sensations he could read like words on a page. His mother used to tell bedtime stories about his great-great-grandmother, Sarah, who could mysteriously see people's true intentions during the Great Depression, when desperate people did desperate things. Some ignorant people called it witchcraft, baby, she would whisper softly, stroking his hair while storms raged outside their warm home. But I call it God's special way of protecting the innocent when the world gets too dark and dangerous for normal people to handle. Now, watching through the rain-soaked window, Miguel felt his gift explode with the most intense emotions he had ever experienced. Roberto Matthews knelt beside Sophia's velvet chair, his face contorted with anguish so deep it made Miguel's chest ache with sympathetic pain. Sophia, sweetheart, I need you to be incredibly brave right now. Some very bad people are trying to hurt our family, and we have to disappear completely for a while. Maybe for a very long time this time. For how long, Daddy? Sophia's voice was just a whisper, but Miguel could hear the deep exhaustion in it, the soul-crushing weariness of a 7-year-old child who had been living in constant, paralyzing fear for far too long. I don't know, Princess. Maybe forever this time. Sophia's carefully maintained composure finally shattered like delicate crystal hitting concrete. Tears streamed down her pale cheeks as she threw her thin arms around her father's neck, her small body trembling with heartbroken sobs. I'm so tired of pretending, Daddy. I'm tired of being afraid all the time. I just want to be a normal girl who can play outside. Miguel's gift exploded with emotion, so intense it nearly knocked him backward against the mansion wall. This family wasn't just scared. They were drowning in absolute suffocating terror, fighting a losing battle against monsters they couldn't see or defeat, carrying secrets that were slowly destroying them from the inside out. That's when Miguel made the decision that would change his life and either save them all or get them all killed. He picked up a small, smooth stone from the garden path and tapped gently on the window glass. Both Sophia and Roberto froze like deer, hearing a hunter's careful footstep in the forest. "Someone's there," Sophia whispered, her voice sharp with the kind of primal fear that comes from months of running and hiding from invisible enemies. Roberto moved protectively in front of his daughter, but Miguel tapped again. 3 short taps, 3 long, 3 short again. SOS in Morse code, something his father had patiently taught him during camping trips that now seemed like precious memories from another life. Sophia's head tilted with curiosity. "Daddy, they're asking for help." Roberto looked at the boy through the rain-soaked window, his brilliant mind racing through 1,000 possibilities and finding no logical explanation that made sense. A homeless child couldn't possibly understand the deadly complexity of their situation. But something in those dark, knowing eyes suggested otherwise, suggested impossible things that made Roberto's hands tremble uncontrollably. "Stay exactly where you are," Roberto whispered urgently to Sophia, then moved toward the mansion's side door, his expensive shoes completely silent on the polished marble floor. Miguel was waiting patiently in the garden when Roberto stepped into the freezing rain, the billionaire's handmade Italian leather shoes immediately soaking as he splashed through rapidly growing puddles. Up close, Roberto looked like a completely different man from the confident, powerful CEO who had once graced worldwide magazine covers, exhausted, haunted, like someone carrying the unbearable weight of the entire world on his shoulders. "Who are you?" Roberto demanded, his voice barely controlled, every word carefully measured and weighed. "Miguel Santos, and I know your daughter isn't really blind, sir." The words hung in the storm-filled air like a death sentence waiting to be executed by an invisible executioner. Roberto felt his knees nearly buckle, his vision swimming as panic crashed over him in overwhelming waves. If this homeless boy knew the truth, how many other people had discovered it? How long before Victor's organization found out their most dangerous secret was exposed? "You're completely wrong," Roberto said desperately, his voice cracking with the strain of maintaining a lie that was killing him. Sophia was in a terrible accident. The doctors at Metropolitan Hospital confirmed everything. The gas explosion was fake," Miguel interrupted with devastating certainty, his supernatural gift reading Roberto's emotions like an open book written in letters of fire. "Someone has been making you pretend she's blind for a long time. Someone who calls her when you're not around and scares her into keeping the secret." Roberto's face went white as fresh snow, his lips moving soundlessly as he struggled to process what this impossible child somehow knew. "How could you possibly know about? Because I can see things other people can't," Miguel said simply, rain streaming down his young face like tears from the sky. "My mama called it the knowing, and right now, I know you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life by running away again instead of fighting these monsters." "You don't understand what we're dealing with," Roberto whispered desperately. "These people will kill us if we stop cooperating. They'll make it look like an accident, just like they did with the explosion. They're going to kill you anyway," Miguel said with the kind of absolute certainty that only comes from genuine supernatural insight. "That's what bad people do when they're finished using someone. They eliminate loose ends, but I can help you stop them before that happens." Roberto looked down at this 8-year-old boy, homeless and completely alone, offering to face a criminal organization that had successfully terrorized his family for 2 years. It should have been absurd, ridiculous, but something in Miguel's eyes made Roberto feel something he had almost forgotten existed: hope. "How?" Roberto whispered, his voice barely audible above the storm. Miguel smiled, and for the first time in months, Roberto Matthews felt that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. "Because they don't know about me yet." At that exact moment, both their phones buzzed simultaneously with an identical message. "Stop talking to the boy immediately. You have exactly 1 hour to disappear completely, or sweet Sophia learns what real blindness is. Don't test me, Matthews. V." They were being watched. Everything. Victor's message hung between them like a death sentence written in digital ink. Roberto's hands trembled as he looked at his phone, watching the countdown timer that had appeared. 58 minutes, 42 seconds, 41 seconds, 40 seconds, counting down to Sophia's destruction. "We can't keep running," Miguel said with supernatural certainty, his young voice cutting through Roberto's panic like a blade. "Every time you've run before, he's found you faster. He's not just tracking your money or your phones, he's tracking your fear." Roberto looked at this homeless boy, rain streaming down both their faces, and made a decision that went against every protective instinct he had developed. "What exactly are you proposing? We go back inside. We pretend to pack, but instead, we use your technology to trace his message, find out where he's watching from, and we end this tonight." Miguel's eyes burned with determination beyond his years. "My gift is telling me something important. He's not as powerful as he wants you to believe. He's desperate, too." They ran inside, where Sophia sat frozen with terror, having heard everything. "Daddy, what did the message say?" Roberto knelt beside her, his heart breaking to see his 7-year-old daughter trying to be brave. "Sophia, I need you to trust me completely. This nice boy is going to help us stop the bad man forever." Sophia turned to Miguel and for the first time in 2 years, let her true sight show completely. "Can you really see the truth about people?" "Yes," Miguel said softly, "and the truth is, you've been the bravest girl in the world, but you don't have to be afraid anymore." Roberto was already at his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The message had come through an encrypted channel, but Roberto Matthews hadn't built a technology empire by accepting limitations. Within minutes, he had traced the signal to its source, a surveillance van parked 3 blocks away. "He's been watching this house for hours," Roberto whispered. "But if he's this close, it means he's confident we can't fight back." He turned to Miguel. "What exactly can your gift tell us about him?" Miguel closed his eyes, extending his supernatural senses toward the van. What he felt made his blood freeze. He's not alone. There are 3 men with him. And Miguel's eyes snapped open. He's planning to take Sophia tonight, regardless of whether you pay or not. The threats aren't to make you obey. They're to keep you distracted while he moves for the final attack. The countdown timer on Roberto's phone hit 45 minutes. Time was running out, but for the first time in 2 years, Roberto Matthews felt like he was fighting back instead of just running. "Then we give him exactly what he doesn't expect. We go to him first." Sophia grabbed her father's hand. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. Daddy, I've been pretending to be helpless for 2 years, but I'm not helpless anymore and we're stronger when we're together." Her young voice carried a steel that reminded Roberto why he had fallen in love with her mother, a woman who never backed down from a fight. Outside, Victor Castillo smiled as he watched the thermal imaging from his surveillance equipment. The Matthews family was frantically packing, exactly as expected. In 43 minutes, when they tried to flee, his team would be waiting. Sophia Matthews' usefulness was about to end permanently. What Victor didn't know was that Roberto Matthews was no longer the broken man he had been manipulating, and he had absolutely no idea that an 8-year-old boy with supernatural abilities was about to turn his perfect plan into his worst nightmare. Victor Castillo had orchestrated dozens of operations like this, and they always followed the same predictable pattern. The target would panic, make desperate attempts to escape, then be captured exactly where Victor expected them to be. It was a formula that had never failed him. But as he watched his thermal imaging screen from the surveillance van, something seemed different. The heat signatures in the Matthews mansion weren't moving with the chaotic desperation he expected. Instead, they seemed to be moving with purpose, with a plan. "Rico, are you seeing this?" Victor's voice carried a note of concern for the first time in years. His lieutenant leaned over the screen. "They're not packing, boss. What are they doing?" Inside the mansion, Roberto was teaching Miguel how to use the security system he had installed. "Every camera, every sensor, every electronic device in this house is connected to my private server. If we're going to face Victor, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." Miguel's gift was working overtime, translating the emotions of the men in the van into sharp, clear insights. There are 4 total. Victor is the calm one. He thinks he's in complete control, but there's something else. Miguel frowned, concentrating harder. He's afraid of someone higher up the chain who doesn't know about the Sophia plan. "What do you mean?" Roberto asked, his fingers pausing over the keyboard. "This isn't just about money anymore," Miguel said with growing certainty. "He was supposed to kill Sophia 2 years ago and failed. Someone has been pressuring him to finish the job. That's why he's here personally. This is his last chance." Sophia, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke. "The phone calls changed last month. He used to sound confident, but lately he's been angry, desperate." Roberto felt the pieces falling into place. If Victor is being pressured by his bosses, then he's not as powerful as we thought. He's vulnerable. That's when Miguel's gift exploded with warning signals. "They're moving. 4 minutes early. Victor just got a call that made him furious." Outside, Victor screamed into the phone. "What do you mean the FBI is asking questions? I said this would be clean." He slammed the phone and turned to his team. Change of plans. We go now. Full force, no subtlety. Kill Matthews, take the girl, make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Through the security cameras, Roberto watched 4 armed men exit the van and approach his house with military precision. But he was no longer the same helpless victim they had been terrorizing for 2 years. He was Roberto Matthews, the man who had built an empire from nothing. And he had been preparing for this moment since Miguel had opened his eyes to the truth. Sophia, go to the safe room exactly like we practiced, he said calmly. Miguel, it's time to see if your gift works through electronic systems. What do you mean? Miguel asked, though his gift was already telling him the answer. Roberto smiled grimly as he opened the house's integrated AI system, the same technology that had made him a billionaire. You can sense people's emotions and intentions. This AI can control every electronic device within a 5-kilometer radius. What happens if we combine that? Miguel placed his hands on the keyboard and immediately felt his gift expand through the network like electricity through copper wire. Suddenly, he wasn't just sensing the 4 men outside. He could feel their heartbeats, their breathing patterns, their exact locations in real time. I can see them, Miguel whispered in amazement. All of them, and I can predict exactly where they'll move next. Victor's team reached the front door, just as every light in the house went out simultaneously. Emergency systems activated ceiling doors and windows. The house's sound system began playing a recording Roberto had prepared. You are surrounded. Surrender now and you won't be harmed. But Victor wasn't surrendering. He was adapting just like he always did. And he had one final card to play, one that would force Roberto Matthews to choose between his daughter's life and his own. Victor's voice echoed through the darkness around the Matthews mansion, amplified by the portable speaker system his team always carried. Very clever, Matthews, but you forgot something important. I don't need to get inside to destroy everything you love. Roberto felt ice form in his veins. Through the security cameras, he watched Victor hold up a device that looked like a military radio. You know what this is? It's a direct line to 3 other teams positioned around the city. One team is at Sophia's school, another is at your brother's house in Miami. The third is watching your late wife's parents in Orlando. Sophia gasped from the safe room where she was supposed to be hiding. Daddy, he's lying, right? He can't hurt Uncle Michael. But Miguel's gift was screaming warnings. He's not lying. There really are other teams, and he's about to give orders to... Miguel's face paled. We have to stop him now. Here's how this works, Victor continued, his voice carrying the confidence of a man holding all the cards. You have 30 seconds to open that door and come out with your hands up, or I make 3 phone calls that will devastate your entire family tree. Your choice, Roberto. Through his advanced security system, Roberto could see Victor's finger hovering over the radio transmitter. One button press would send death orders to teams in 3 states. 20 seconds. Roberto, I can see you through those cameras you're so proud of. But Roberto wasn't looking at Victor anymore. He was looking at Miguel, whose supernatural gift had suddenly exploded with an intensity that made the boy stagger backward. What is it? Roberto whispered urgently. He's lying about the teams, Miguel said, his voice filled with the electric certainty of absolute truth. My gift told me. There's only one other team, and they're not at your family's houses. Miguel's eyes widened. They're coming here as backup. That radio call is just a bluff to make you surrender. 10 seconds, Matthews. Sophia's voice crackled through the safe room intercom. Daddy, Miguel is right. When the bad man used to call me, sometimes I could hear other voices in the background, but tonight I only hear one other person in that van. Roberto felt the pieces clicking into place. Victor was desperate, alone except for his 3-man team, and completely cut off from whatever criminal organization had been pressuring him. This wasn't a position of strength. This was a desperate final gambit from a man who had lost everything. Time's up, Victor shouted. Say goodbye to... That's when Roberto Matthews revealed why he had become one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. Instead of surrendering or hiding, he activated a system he had been secretly building for 2 years. Since the first blackmail demand, Every streetlight within 6 blocks suddenly blazed with stadium light intensity. Car alarms began wailing throughout the neighborhood. Emergency services received automated calls reporting an armed robbery in progress. And most importantly, the advanced facial recognition system Roberto had quietly installed through the city's traffic camera network had just identified Victor Castillo as a wanted man. "You see, Victor," Roberto's voice now echoed from speakers throughout the neighborhood. "I haven't just been hiding for 2 years. I've been hunting. I know exactly who you are, where you live, and what you've done to dozens of other families." Through his surveillance network, Roberto watched Victor's confident expression crumble into panic. "This is impossible. You're just a broken man hiding with your damaged daughter." "I am Roberto Matthews," came the reply, filled with steel and certainty. "And I don't hide anymore." Police sirens began wailing in the distance, growing closer every second. Victor's team looked at their leader with growing desperation. They had signed up to terrorize helpless victims, not to face a technology genius who had turned the entire city into his personal security system. But Victor still had one final devastating card to play, one that would force Roberto to choose between justice and his daughter's life. Victor's expression of panic suddenly transformed into something much more dangerous. The smile of a man who had been saving his most devastating weapon for exactly this moment. As police sirens grew louder in the distance, he pulled from his coat a device that made Roberto's blood turn to ice water. "You recognize this, don't you, Roberto?" Victor held up what looked like a modified smartphone connected to a small black box. "2 years of surveillance taught me something interesting about your daughter. She still has nightmares about the explosion, terrible screaming nightmares where she begs for Daddy to save her." Miguel's gift exploded with horror, so intense it nearly knocked him to his knees. "Roberto, that device, it's not what we think. It's a neural frequency transmitter." Victor finished with predatory satisfaction, tuned specifically to Sophia's brainwave patterns. "One button press and I can cause a seizure that will cause real and permanent blindness, or worse." Sophia's terrified voice crackled through the intercom. "Daddy, what is he talking about? What machine is that?" Roberto felt the world spinning around him. "You're lying. That technology doesn't exist." "Doesn't exist?" Victor smiled wider. "Who do you think funded the research that led to your precious neural connect systems? Did you really believe you built that empire alone?" He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "My organization has been watching you since college, Roberto. Funding your research, directing your development, waiting for the perfect moment to take control." The revelation hit Roberto like a physical blow. His entire career, his company, his fortune, everything had been orchestrated by the same criminals who destroyed his family. "That's impossible." "Check your initial investment records," Victor suggested mockingly. "Shell companies, offshore accounts, mysterious angel investors who never wanted to meet in person. We've owned you for 15 years, Roberto. The only question was when we'd collect." Miguel's supernatural gift was screaming warnings, but not about the device in Victor's hand. Something else, something bigger and more terrible was about to be revealed. "Roberto, he's telling the truth about your company, but there's something more. Something about Sophia he doesn't want us to know." "Shut up, boy," Victor snarled, his confidence cracking slightly. "You don't know what you're dealing with." But Miguel continued, his gift cutting through years of lies like a supernatural scalpel. "The explosion 2 years ago, it wasn't meant to make Sophia blind. It was meant to activate something they put inside her when she was a baby." Sophia's voice from the safe room was just a whisper. "Daddy, what is he talking about? What did they put inside me?" Victor's face had gone completely white. "How could you possibly?" "Because I can see the truth," Miguel said with growing horror. "They've been using Sophia as their test subject her entire life. The blindness was never the point. They needed to see if the neural implants they were developing would work on human children." Roberto felt reality crumbling around him. "What neural implants?" "The ones they've been testing through your own company." Miguel said, his voice filled with sick understanding. Neural Connect Systems wasn't just making AI interfaces for computers. They were making brain control devices for people, and Sophia has been their primary test subject since birth. Victor raised the device, his finger hovering over the trigger. Enough. One more word, and I activate every implant in her brain simultaneously. She'll be dead in seconds. But Sophia's voice came through the intercom, and it was no longer the voice of a terrified 7-year-old child. It was the voice of someone who had just understood the complete truth about her life. Daddy, I can feel them. The things in my head, they've been there so long, I thought they were just part of me. Police cars screeched to a stop outside the mansion, but Roberto barely noticed. His daughter, his precious and innocent daughter, had been the victim of medical experimentation her entire life, and he had unknowingly helped create the technology that enslaved her. Here's your choice, Roberto, Victor said with finality. Surrender now, and let us continue our research, or watch your daughter die knowing that every breath she's ever taken was by our tolerance. That's when Sophia made the decision that would change everything. Daddy, I want you to let them activate the devices. Sophia, no. I'm tired of being afraid, and I think I know how to turn their weapons against them. Sophia's words hung in the air like a challenge thrown before the gods. Through the intercom, her 7-year-old voice carried a strength that reminded Roberto exactly why he had fallen in love with her mother, a neuroscientist who never backed down from any challenge, no matter how impossible. Sophia, sweetheart, you don't understand what these devices can do, Roberto pleaded desperately. But I do understand, Daddy, Sophia replied with strange calm. I've been living with them my entire life, and I've been learning how they work every time they activated during my nightmares. They're not just controlling my brain, they're connected to it, which means the connection works both ways. Miguel's gift exploded with understanding so brilliant it nearly blinded him. She's right. The neural implants aren't just receivers, they're transceivers. If Sophia can learn to control them, instead of being controlled by them, Victor's confident expression began to crack. That's impossible. A child can't override military-grade neural control technology. Can't she? Sophia's voice now carried an edge that made everyone freeze. Tell me, Victor, how do you think I managed to fool everyone about my blindness for 2 years? How do you think I learned to control my pupillary responses, my eye movements, my reactions to light? Through the security cameras, Roberto watched Victor's face pale as the implications hit him. You've been practicing with the implants, training yourself. Every night, Sophia confirmed. Every nightmare, every terrifying phone call, every moment of fear. I was learning how your technology works from the inside out. And Miguel, with his gift, has been helping me understand things I couldn't figure out alone. Miguel placed his hands on Roberto's computer keyboard, his supernatural abilities merging with Roberto's AI system. I can feel the network, Sophia. The implants aren't just in your head. They're connected to a larger system, a system that's been monitoring other children. The revelation hit Roberto like lightning. How many children? 17 that I can sense, Miguel said, his voice filled with horror and determination. Across the country, all with families being blackmailed, all living in fear, all being used as test subjects. Victor raised his device higher, his hand trembling now. Enough! I'm activating the neural override now. Sophia dies in 3 seconds. Unless what? Sophia's voice cut through his threat like steel through silk. Unless you keep torturing children forever? I don't think so. What happened next would be discussed in scientific journals for decades. Sophia Matthews, through a combination of 7 years of unconscious training and supernatural assistance from an 8-year-old boy with the knowing, did something every expert said was impossible. She took control of her own neural implants. The effect was immediate and devastating. Victor's control device began sparking and smoking as feedback surged through the network. Every screen in the Matthews mansion flickered with neural patterns that looked like digital lightning. And most impossible of all, Sophia's voice now came not just through the intercom, but through every connected device within a 5-kilometer radius. "My name is Sophia Matthews." Her voice echoed from phones, computers, car radios, and television screens throughout the city. "For 2 years, bad people have been using me and 16 other children as test subjects for mind control experiments. But we're not victims anymore." Police officers around Victor's van staggered backward as their radio equipment began broadcasting Sophia's voice. News stations across the country found their signals hijacked by a 7-year-old girl who was single-handedly exposing the greatest criminal conspiracy in American history. "Victor Castillo and his organization have been experimenting on children," Sophia continued, her voice now reaching millions of people simultaneously. "But they made a mistake. They taught us how to use their own technology against them." Victor's device exploded in his hands, sending him reeling. Across the country, other members of his organization found their control systems failing as 17 children simultaneously fought back using technology that had been intended to enslave them. Through the security cameras, Roberto watched Victor being arrested by police officers who looked like they had just witnessed a miracle, which in many ways they had. But Sophia's voice, now speaking from the mansion's safe room, where she sat surrounded by screens showing neural patterns like digital fireworks, had one final message. "Daddy, I think I know how to find all the other children they took, but we're going to need help from someone very special." Miguel looked at Roberto with eyes that glowed with supernatural understanding. "She's talking about her mother, isn't she?" Roberto felt his world shift on its axis one last time. "Sophia, sweetheart, your mother died when you were 3 years old." "No, Daddy," Sophia said with the certainty of someone who had just accessed memories that had been locked away by neural manipulation for 4 years. "She didn't die. They took her because she was getting too close to discovering what they were doing to me. But I know where she is now, and I can take us there," Miguel added, his gift showing possibilities that extended beyond anything they had imagined. "But we're going to need to do something that's never been done before." Sophia's image appeared on every screen in the house, her 7-year-old face glowing with determination and power that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Are you ready to save 17 children and bring home a mother who has been fighting to get back to her daughter for 4 years? Roberto Matthews looked at his daughter, his brilliant and impossibly brave daughter, who had just defeated a criminal empire using their own weapons against them and knew their greatest adventure was just beginning. "Tell us what we need to do." The warehouse in Arizona looked abandoned from the outside, but Miguel's gift told a completely different story. As their private jet descended toward the makeshift airstrip Roberto had arranged, Miguel could feel pain radiating from the building like heat waves in the desert. The worth of 17 families of agony concentrated in one nightmare location. "She's there," Sophia said softly, her neural implants now fully under her control, showing brain activity patterns on Roberto's tablet that looked like digital tears. "Mama is there, and she's been fighting so hard to get back to me." 3 days had passed since Victor's arrest made international headlines. "Child neural experimentation ring exposed by 7-year-old victim," screamed newspapers around the world. But the real story was just beginning. Because Victor was telling the truth about one thing. He was just a middle manager in an organization that extended to the highest levels of government and technology. Dr. Sarah Chen, the FBI's lead investigator in neural crimes, met them on the airstrip with a team of specialists who looked like they had stepped out of a science fiction movie. "Mr. Matthews, I have to warn you, what we're about to attempt has never been tried before. Using your daughter's neural connection to locate and free 17 other children simultaneously." "Jen, it will work," Sophia interrupted, with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent 3 days learning to control technology that had been designed to control her. "Miguel's gift shows me exactly where each child is, and their fear patterns tell me how to help them break free." Miguel nodded, his supernatural abilities now enhanced beyond anything his great-great-grandmother could have imagined. I can sense all of them. But there's something else in that building, something that's been waiting for us. The warehouse doors opened without resistance, as if the building itself wanted to surrender its secrets. Inside, they found a facility that looked like a cross between a medical laboratory and a prison. Clean white walls lined with cells containing children aged 5 to 16, all connected to monitoring equipment that tracked their neural activity 24 hours a day. But it was the figure in the central laboratory that made Roberto's heart stop completely. Dr. Lisa Matthews, Sophia's mother, Roberto's wife, the woman who was supposedly dead 4 years ago, stood behind a wall of reinforced glass. Her brilliant mind clearly intact, but her body showing the effects of years of captivity. She was working frantically at a computer terminal, her fingers flying across keyboards as she tried to disable the neural control systems from within. "Mama." Sophia's voice echoed through the facility's speakers as her neural implants interfaced with every electronic system in the building. Lisa looked up, and the expression of pure joy that crossed her face was worth more than all of Roberto's billions combined. "Sophia, my girl, is it really you?" "I'm here, Mama. And I brought Daddy and our new friend Miguel to take everyone home." Miguel stepped forward, his gift now expanded through Sophia's neural network to encompass the entire facility. "Dr. Matthews, we can see you, but we need to know how to safely free all the children. The neural implants are more complex than we realized." Lisa's voice crackled through the intercom system, and Roberto could hear the brilliant scientist who first made him fall in love with her mind. "The implants can be safely deactivated, but only if we do it simultaneously in all subjects. If we try to free one at a time, the remaining systems will overload and cause permanent brain damage." "Then we do them all at once," Sophia said with determination that reminded everyone why this 7-year-old child had already defeated a criminal empire. "Miguel, can you help me reach all of them?" Miguel placed his hands on the facility's central computer system, and suddenly his consciousness expanded beyond anything humans should experience. Through Sophia's neural network, he could feel the thoughts and emotions of 17 children who had been prisoners and experimental subjects for years. But he could also feel something more. The love that had kept them alive, the hope that had sustained them, the unbreakable human spirit that no technology could ever truly control. "Everyone listen to my voice," Sophia spoke through the facility's speakers, her words reaching every child simultaneously. "You don't know me, but I'm like you. I've been controlled by the bad people's machines, but today we take control back together. And what happened next would be studied by neuroscientists for generations. 17 children, guided by Sophia's neural patterns and supported by Miguel's supernatural gift, simultaneously overrode their control implants and reclaimed their own minds. The facility's lights flickered and surged as years of stolen neural energy was suddenly returned to its rightful owners. Cell doors throughout the building opened automatically, monitoring equipment shut down as the children it had been tracking stood up and walked free for the first time in years. And in the central laboratory, the security door that had kept Lisa Matthews prisoner for 4 years finally opened. The reunion that followed was everything Roberto had dreamed of during the darkest nights of the past 4 years. Sophia ran into her mother's arms with the speed of someone who had been waiting her conscious lifetime for this moment. Lisa held her daughter tight, tears streaming down her face as she felt Sophia's thoughts through the neural connection they now shared. "I never stopped looking for you," Lisa whispered. "Even when they told me you had forgotten me, I never stopped trying to get back to you." "I remembered, Mama," Sophia said, her 7-year-old voice filled with wisdom beyond her years. "The neural implants couldn't erase love. Nothing can erase love." Miguel stood nearby, watching the family reunion with a smile that hadn't crossed his face since before his parents died. But his gift was also showing him something wonderful. Each of the 17 children was being reunited with families who had never stopped searching, never stopped hoping, never stopped believing that love was stronger than any technology designed to destroy it. Roberto knelt beside Miguel, this homeless boy who had saved his entire world. "Miguel, I know you've been living on the streets since your parents died, but if you want, Sophia and I and Lisa, we'd love for you to come home with us as part of our family." Miguel's gift, for the first time since he'd discovered it, showed him something purely beautiful. A future filled with love, security, and the chance to use his abilities to help other people instead of just surviving day by day. "I'd like that very much," Miguel said softly. 6 months later, the Matthews Foundation for Neural Freedom had become the world's leading organization dedicated to protecting children from technological exploitation. Sophia, now 8 years old and fully in control of abilities that amazed scientists worldwide, had become the youngest person to address the United Nations about children's rights. Miguel Santos Matthews, for he had taken the family name when Roberto and Lisa officially adopted him, used his gift to help law enforcement agencies around the world locate missing children and expose criminal organizations that preyed on the innocent. And Roberto Matthews learned that sometimes the world's greatest technology isn't artificial intelligence, neural networks, or billion-dollar software systems. Sometimes the greatest technology is the simple, unbreakable connection between people who choose to love each other, no matter what darkness tries to separate them. As Sophia liked to say during her speeches to world leaders, "Love is the only neural network that can never be hacked, never be controlled, and never be destroyed. And that's the most powerful technology of all." During one of her most memorable presentations at the UN, Sophia explained how a broken family and a homeless boy with a special gift were able to defeat an international criminal organization. "They thought they could control us because we were small and scared, but they forgot that even the smallest people can be the bravest when they fight for what they love. And when brave people come together, a girl who pretended to be blind, a boy who could see truth in people's hearts, a father who never gave up, and a mother who never stopped fighting to come home, there's no technology in the world that can stop us." Miguel, sitting in the audience, felt his gift pulse with the pure truth of his adoptive sister's words. He had found not just a family, but a greater purpose. His special ability, which had once been a source of loneliness and confusion, was now a tool to protect other children from suffering what they had endured. Lisa Matthews, now the Foundation's scientific director, had developed methods to detect and remove unauthorized neural implants in children. Her research, born from a mother's determination to protect her daughter, was helping hundreds of families around the world. Roberto used his technology expertise to create security systems that protected vulnerable children, transforming the same tools that had once been used to control them into weapons to defend the innocent. The true miracle, but perhaps the greatest miracle of all, was how a family shattered by tragedy and separated by evil found their way back to each other. How an orphaned street boy found a home. How children who had been victims of horrific experiments became advocates for other children. In their quiet evenings together, when the cameras turned off and the speeches ended, they were simply a family. Sophia played in the garden without pretending she couldn't see the flowers. Miguel used his gift to help with homework, predicting when someone was confused or frustrated. Lisa and Roberto worked side by side, rebuilding not just their company, but their lives. And sometimes, when Sophia had nightmares about the old days, Miguel would sit by her bed and use his gift to chase away the dark fears, replacing them with dreams of hope and love. "You know," Sophia said one evening, as the family sat together watching the sunset over their new home, a home with windows she never had to pretend she couldn't see through, "I think the bad people did something they never intended to do." "What was that, sweetheart?" Lisa asked. "They made us stronger. Not just our family, but all the families they hurt. Because when you survive darkness, you appreciate the light more." Miguel smiled, his gift telling him that every word Sophia spoke was true. "And because now we know that no matter how scary things get, we can always find our way back to each other." Roberto hugged his family, his brave daughter, his brilliant wife, and the special boy who had saved them all, and knew they had found something more valuable than any technology. They had found unconditional love, and that was truly the only network that could never be broken. If this story touched your heart, leave an amen in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to renew their faith and hope. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for more inspiring stories of faith, love, and miracles. Tell us, have you ever witnessed or experienced a miracle? Share your experience in the comments. Remember, God works in mysterious ways and sometimes uses the most unlikely people to perform his greatest miracles. God bless you and your family.